Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast. And I am joined today by Mike Rhodes, who is best-selling author, keynote speaker, and CEO at WebSavvy in Melbourne, Australia. Mike, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Pleasure's all mine, James. Thanks for having me on.
So the majority of our listeners are going to be UK and European kind of based. So for those people who may not have kind of heard you speak or read your book, maybe you can give us a little bit of a kind of a background about yourself and how you got to be where you are today.
I grew up in the UK. I left about 20 odd years ago, chasing the sun and actually the snow to start with. I went to New Zealand for 3 weeks. I stayed for 3 years. I started my first business there, ended up selling that after a couple of years and moving to Sydney, and then met the woman of my dreams who was living in Adelaide and didn't want to move to Sydney. So we met in the middle and we moved to Melbourne, 15 years ago. And I started this business about that time when I moved to Melbourne. I'd always been consulting with small business. Like after selling mine, I've just always loved growing businesses.
Yep.
So sort of headed down the consulting road. I don't know if you remember a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It was kind of the Bible of small business back then, 20, 25 years ago. So I became an E-Myth coach and consultant because that was my MBA in small business. And every bloody business I walked into, every single one was like, mate, I just need more customers. I just need more patients in the clinic. I just need more covers in the restaurant. I'm like, we get to that. It's in module 5. Like, well, when do we get to module 5? And because the answer to that question was kind of, well, it depends on you, but usually 6 to 10 months, get out. And I sucked at being an E-Myth coach because I couldn't sell it. It was all about systemizing your business, which was mindset and systems and team before we got to the lead generation part. And then I saw a talk from my now co-author, Perry Marshall, who was here for his first time in Australia back in 2004. And he was talking about this thing called Google AdWords. It was called back then. And what do you mean? You only show ads to people that are searching for what you have to sell, and you only pay if they're interested enough to click on your ad. Oh my God, this is what all these small businesses want and desperately need. I'm going to do that. Stop paying Gerber a small fortune every year for the rights to use the name E-Myth. And got stuck into Google Ads and tried to teach everybody I met about it. And it took me a little while to realize that 9 out of 10 people I was talking to said, mate, stop telling me how it works. I don't care how it bloody works. Just do it for me, would you? So that's how the agency was born.
That's amazing. I mean, we're all quite familiar now with kind of Google Ads and online advertising and PPC and all the other kind of versions of that have kind of done. But people still tend to get the basics wrong, right? I mean, there's still things that people, we get asked, and I'm sure you do, how you can make it more effective, how you get it switched on, how you create the best ad you can. Is it even worth doing? Because there's a lot of competition there. Get that asked. I'm sure you get that asked a lot. So, with your years and kind of huge amount of experience, maybe you can kind of share with us a few of your kind of, initial tips around generating kind of clients from advertising on Google.
Yeah. All right. So I'll break it down for you. I'll give you a mental model so you can picture this if you're listening. There are 3 main levers inside of any Google Ads account. And we should start too by saying, look, it's really easy to get started. It is kind of hard to master. So if you want to learn this and you're going to put the time in and get educated, fantastic, more power to you. If you're like, I just want to dabble, then maybe think about, I know that sounds very self-serving as an agency, but you probably want to get some help, especially in the early days, to get things running. Because if you get it set up wrong, it's very difficult to recover from that. And you may join the legion of people that say, Google Ads doesn't work. I melted a credit card. It's all a load of rubbish. It's just a tool, right? Let's start with that basic premise. It's just a tool, like fire is a tool. Use fire well, you can toast your marshmallows. Use it badly, you burn down your tent. So Google Ads, same thing. It depends how you yield the tool. Right. With that said, we've got 3 main levers: bidding, targeting, and messaging. So who are you going to talk to? How are you going to find them? Like, what's the message that you're going to say to them? And then let's do that profitably. That line of it's just showing the right ad to the right person at the right time. Nobody ever talks about profit in that. Like, let's do that profitably, because that comes from the old school world of TV and radio. And it's just about, getting known. It's just about the number of impressions or the number of eyeballs. No, it's not. Bugger that. We're small businesses. We need this to be profitable. So the wonderful thing about Google Ads is that it's an auction-based system. It's a competitive system, as you just alluded to then. So are your competitors on Google Ads? If they are, that's a good sign because it means it's probably working for them.
Yep.
If you think, oh, I found this magic keyword that nobody is going after, it's amazing, I'll be the only person there. In 2021, there's probably a reason for that. Nobody could make it work. So that isn't, there are no magic keywords that no one's thought of at this point in time.
Mhm.
So bidding, targeting, messaging. Bidding, once you get things set up, let's just park that for a second. The machine is going to do that for you because Google has so much data about all of us. So you hand that one over to the machine. You have to give it the target. What am I aiming for? I need to get leads for $80 a lead or $10 a lead or $250 a lead, whatever it might be.
Just on that point, one of the questions kind of that I know kind of comes up is how much money should I spend?
Yeah,
that's always the kind of big question. It's like, and how do you? Is there a formula or is there a target or is there any way that you can kind of figure out, especially for small businesses? I'm sure you work with, budgets are tight, and as you mentioned, you want to get return on that investment. So, is there a sweet spot, or is there like, could you say to any business, right, we can take, $30, $100, $200, $1,000, and get a return on it? Is there a point at which it just doesn't work, and there's a point where it definitely does work?
There isn't really, in terms of, if you knew what you were doing for your business, there isn't a limit on the low side or the high side. However, to get a good agency involved, that's where the economics come into it. Like our minimum fee, a couple of grand a month. So if you're looking to spend $500 a month, it isn't going to be worth it to work with an agency like us.
Yeah.
There will be people out there that say, oh, I can look after you. I'll only charge you $200 a month and I'll help you spend that $500. You are kind of going to get what you pay for. There's a reason that they're only charging $200 a month. So with that caveat, there is no limit, but getting good help costs, and that cost therefore increases your effective cost per lead. You're spending $500, but you're charging another $2 grand in fees. Now you're actually paying 5 times what you thought you were paying per lead, and maybe that doesn't work for the economics of your business.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, sorry.
But there is no minimum. You don't have to spend $100 a day in order to use the Google system.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing in this part of the conversation is you must know your numbers. Even if it's just back of an envelope, you've got to understand, what are you willing to spend to acquire a new lead? Knowing that not all of those leads are going to turn into customers. So back of an envelope calculation, what's a customer on average worth to you? Some people use lifetime value there. Some people think about, what's my revenue going to be over the next 90 days? What's your time frame that you're thinking about? Okay, if a customer is worth 5 grand to me, how many leads do I need to turn into that customer? Is it 10 to 1? Is it 2 to 1? Is it 100 to 1? Well, some basic maths now will tell you what your break even cost per lead is. You can't really spend more than $50 a lead.
And am I kind of correct in thinking that within the system, within the kind of Google AdWords system, it will help you with some of that anyway, right? There is some kind of maths and calculations within there to help you work through some of that, right?
Some of that, right? They'll simplify that for you. But, let's take the other side of this. I don't work for Google, never have worked for Google, so I can kind of tell you the truth rather than the Google version of it. Google are going to show you lots of cumulative charts with their forecasting, charts that always go up and to the right, which kind of implies, hey, the more you spend, the more we can get. Be very wary of cumulative charts because they always go up and to the right. And when you get a bit more sophisticated with your Google Ads journey, you'll start thinking about incrementality. Okay, great. The first 5 grand I spent this month was profitable. What's going to happen to the next 5 grand? How much profitable is that going to be? And then the next 5 grand, how much profitable is that going to be? Because the first chunk of money you spend absolutely should be the most profitable chunk of money, right? But you start to hit diminishing returns. Google will happily take 20, 25, 30 grand from you. But if you're not getting any more leads for that extra expense, it may not be worth it to you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of a little bit about the bidding. Let's kind of the next part.
Bidding. So let's move on to targeting. So the wonderful thing about Google, the huge difference that they have over the other big one, Facebook, is keywords. You know, we all jump onto Google every day and we type stuff, or we ask our Google assistants and so on. But mainly, let's just focus on the front page of Google. We type things in. We're looking for an answer to our problems, and you can put ads in front of people based on what they type into Google. So you got to then think about the level of intent or commercial intent behind that. I don't know why, but I always use an example of television. If someone is just typing in the single word television, well, that could mean lots of different things to lots of different people. They might be looking for a TV guide. It might be kids doing a homework project. It might be somebody looking to buy a new TV, but you don't really know that. You can't tell what the intent is from that single word. And generally speaking, the more words that someone types, the more specific they're getting. So then they do a bit of research and they look around and they go, oh, I should be searching for OLED TV or Samsung TV. And then they do a bit more research and they bounce around a few sites. And then they start searching for best Samsung TV near me or Samsung 65XYZ. Those are the people that you really want to get in front of. Those are the people right at the bottom of this, you know, the mythical marketing funnel, the ones with the highest commercial intent, really the ones that are most likely to lead to profit for your business. And this is the same on the lead generation side as it is on the e-commerce side. You go after phrases that are most likely to turn into a lead, most likely to be profitable for your business.
Isn't that what was called the kind of long tail? Was that the kind of correct term, you know, or is that something slightly different now?
No, it's very similar. So the long tail is you have short head and long tail, and long tail just means there's a distribution there of how many people search for each of these sort of phrases over time. And the long tail goes on and on and on and on. You think about Amazon, they sell a ton of books that might only sell 2 or 3 copies a year. There's very few books that sell 10,000 or more copies a year. So you picture that distribution. It is the same with keywords. You know, there are far more people every day searching for television, but that doesn't mean it's a good keyword for you if you sell TVs. That just means you could spend a lot of money very, very quickly and not get much reward. So instead, you want to start with the ones with commercial intent, whatever that is for your business. And this is the tricky part. Right? What do I pick?
Yeah, exactly. So that was my next question is kind of how do you research those kind of key terms and keywords? How do you know what's good for your sector? As you know, obviously a lot of people listening to this are in recruitment and staffing. We also get people from kind of the marketing industry and those kind of, there's different businesses, different industries, different sectors, different companies are all going to, how do you, is there ways that you can kind of research this, give yourself a bit of a bit of an advantage?
There absolutely are. But I also find that people go off the deep end here. People spend weeks with a spreadsheet or a whiteboard, like coming up with lists and lists of these things, and then mixing and matching all these words to come up with hundreds and thousands of combinations. It's like, okay, let's just slow right down. There's a tool inside of Google Ads called the Google Keyword Planner. You have to have a Google Ads account to use this, but you don't actually have to be spending any money. You can point it at your website and say, here's my URL. It will go and look at your website and suggest a bunch of keywords. The worst thing you could do at that point would be tick all 686 keywords. Awesome. Let's go spend some money. No, let's not do that. But that's at least a starting point, because before you use this tool, you have no idea what people might be searching for. I think, involving friends and family at this point is really good too. Hey, you know what I do for a living? How would you search for what it is that we do, the services that we provide? How would you search for that? I used to, in talks, put a slide up, and it might be a pair of red high heels or a motorbike or something. And I'd ask a room full of people, write down 3 phrases to describe what you're seeing on the screen. And in a room of, say, 100 people, you could easily come up with 200 different phrases to describe exactly the same thing. We're weird. We all think we're such special snowflakes. We all have our own way of describing something. So you want to reach all of those people, but you also don't want to have to try and think of 5,000 different keywords. Now, there's a few ways around this. You can start with something that's fairly broad, not as broad as television, not as broad as recruitment, but you can start with something fairly broad, and then Google will give you the data over time. So you start spending some money, people start clicking on your ad, and it's not perfect, but you'll come back a month later and you'll look at the report from Google and you go, wow, okay, it's showing me exactly what people typed into Google that caused my ad to show. And for the ones that clicked it, I can see most of the data of the people that then click through to my website. Within there, you'll find some gems. You'll also find some shockers. And so you tick the button that says, yep, never show my ad for that again, please, Google. Like recruitment for dogs. Nope, not interested in that. Never show my ad for that again. And over time, it gets better and better. It is definitely a lot of art to go with the science at this point. You just, with experience, you get a feeling for that's going to be an okay keyword. That's going to be an absolute pig. And it's a better starting point. Like I said before, if you're doing it for the first time, getting help with that setup, with that initial keyword list is going to get you so much further ahead. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be done. It's always evolving. You're always optimizing that. But if you start, a single word recruitment and give Google $100 a day to play with, it'll happily take your money and you won't get much to show for it.
One of the advantages I can see of the kind of Google keyword planner also is if your website is initially set up correctly, if it comes back with a ton of keywords that have absolutely nothing to do with what you're trying to kind of sell or provide, it tells you that you probably got a little bit of work kind of don't spend any money just yet. You probably got a bit of work on your own website to make sure it's fit for purpose.
That is a really good point. And there's also people at that point go, oh, in that case, I'm not going to do ads. I'm going to work on my organic traffic. But that's a massive signpost now that you're never going to get any organic traffic because Google either doesn't understand what you're about or it thinks you're about this completely different thing because of the way you choose to write the copy on your website. So it's a really good tool to use early on in the piece to at least know whoever wrote the copy for your website, whether that was you or the web dev or your niece, like, is it on point? Are we heading in the right direction?
Yeah.
And I personally, and I know this is going to sound very self-serving, but I think paid ads should come before organic, right? So there's loads of tools like Keyword Planner or SEMrush or Ahrefs. There's lots of tools out there that will tell you how many people are searching for each of these keywords each day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use that geographically. You say, okay, just for the UK, just this list of 20 keywords, how many people are searching? But what none of those tools will tell you is how are they going to work for me, for my website, for my offer, for the thing that I'm trying to swap for an email address. Are they going to convert for me? We have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Google Ads, you can test that and get real data, not opinions, not, standing there with a clipboard of, would you come to our website and fill out this thing? You get real data on what's working and what's not very, very quickly. In a matter of weeks, you can then take that list to the SEO guys and say, right, optimize the crap out of my website for that stuff, because that is what brings in the right type of people for our business.
Yeah. And so the next stage is messaging, right?
Messaging. So there's a couple of parts to that. In terms of a Google Ads account, you need to write an ad. And there's some extra little bits that go around the ad called extensions, but it basically comes down to the ad. Mm-hmm. Around about 300 characters, a tweet or two. But you've also got to think about the message that's on your website, because if you're saying one thing in an ad and then somebody lands on your website and it's a completely different message, obviously we kind of orientate ourselves and go, oh, I'm in the wrong place, and you bounce out of there straight away. So you've got to think about the message that's on the site. And the thing that nobody ever does is to think about the offer. We come up with an idea. What would a typical offer for one of your listeners be? So you're in recruitment. Is it a free consultation? Put your details in here and we'll give you a call and talk about your staffing needs?
I mean, it could be. So you might have something like maybe let's take a salary survey or something like that. That might be kind of, you might be trying to drive traffic to something like that. Might be kind of a nice piece of kind of value added content that we might be working for a business, for instance.
So then think about the slippery slope from what are they typing in? So let's find some keywords that match that level of intent. Mm-hmm. So it's not like find a job near me. They're looking for certain things. Then they see an ad that talks about, well, understand the salary, blah, 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 blah. And then they come through to a site that matches that same headline, that same intent with a nice, easy to use tool or quiz or slider or whatever it is there. But it's this nice slippery slope from that initial thing that they typed into Google, the ad that they saw, the page they saw, the offer. It all lines up. There's no big jarring differences there.
So there's a
That's a
nice kind
much,
of
much more
flow, a
work.
process, as it were. You need to kind of map that out a little bit first. You would say that, even though the first exposure to your brand may well be the advert for a lead, there's a plan out. So this is a journey. So we want the person to click on the ad, then land on this
Yeah,
page.
and you can start backwards there. You can start with, well, what have we got?
Yeah.
What do we have on our website that we know people like interacting with, or we know resonates with our existing users? You've got Google Analytics. Everyone's got it. Nobody looks at it, but everyone's got it. So what content is resonating? Which pages do people tend to spend time on? If you have some kind of lead magnet, something that people swap for an email address, what is that right now? Yeah, you might build another 7 of them over time, but what do you have to work with right now? Cool. Okay. That's where we're going to send people, even if it's just one page. All right. What 2 or 3 different types of ads could we write that lead seamlessly into that page? And now what type of keyword would those people go after? So maybe not starting with the keyword planner and everything that we could think about in the entire industry. What have we got right now? And what makes sense? Which keywords make sense to lead people to that particular page, that particular offer?
Yeah. And again, that kind of makes sense. And I this is something I was told a while ago, but this may no longer be true. That someone is more likely to click on your advert if you also appear in the organic listings as well. Does that make a difference to someone's kind of, the psychology around clicking on an advert, or is there,
There is,
you know,
yeah. Well, there is some data around this. Most of it is Google's own data, and most of it's fairly old. But it does intuitively make sense that if you were sort of top 3 organic listings and you've got an ad at the top of the page, it's kind of perception of leadership. I've seen this person around, and then you tack on a remarketing campaign. We haven't talked about that yet, but those ads that follow you around the internet once somebody has been to your site. So now the targeting, instead of being keyword based, now we're talking about behavioral based advertising. So based on some sort of behavior, they've filled in that form on the website and given you the email address so we could target people based on that. They've been to the site and they spent more than a couple of minutes on the site, or they read 3 blog articles. We could target people based on that. And then there are interests or activities, behaviors, not based on what they've done that you know about, but there's behaviors and activities that Google know about. They've searched for this type of keyword in the past, or they've been to this type of website in the past. One of those might just be just saying, they've been to my biggest 5 competitor websites. Hey, Google, find people that have been to sites like this, and this, and go show my ads to those people, please. You can do that too.
Let's talk about those other ads then, because we've kind of gone through those 3 stages. What are the different types of ads now within Google that we could use?
Right.
So you mentioned retargeting and kind of given, and even if people don't understand it, your explanation is perfect. But as you mentioned, it's one of those kind of adverts that tends to follow you around the internet. And you may be on different websites, and suddenly you've kind of got up the shoes you looked at on Amazon or something like that. Those are the kind of things. Yeah.
Well, let's do it from your prospect's point of view rather than from the geeky point of view that we're in at the moment of being an advertiser. You're a prospect. You need something. There's one of 2 places you're going to go. You go to Google and you type something in, and over there you're going to see some sort of text ad across the top. That's a search ad, or those little square images with a price underneath. That's a shopping ad, which probably doesn't apply in this conversation. Not many retailers listening, so we'll park those for now. But that's the search network. Then the other half of Google is something called the display network. So that's 2 million plus websites at this point, over 1 million apps. That's everything from massive websites like Oprah.com and ESPN down to these tiny, tiny little blogs and forums that you or I have no idea about, never been to, will never go there, but Google knows who they are. And that includes obviously a bunch of Google's own websites, from massive things like YouTube and Gmail, etc. And essentially the owners of those websites have said, we get some traffic. We'd like to make some money from that traffic. Hey, Google, stick some ads on my site and we'll split the revenue. Awesome. So when you go to a site like Oprah.com, you will see ads there. And if you click on that ad, you go off to their website, Google gets some cash, the advertiser gets some cash. The publisher gets some cash, and the advertiser is paying for the privilege there. Now, again, you only pay money generally if somebody clicks on that. So it's kind of free branding up until that point. And those type of ads, whether it's a banner ad on one of those websites or a video on YouTube, Those are based on, for the most part, audiences. So rather than keywords now, we're now talking about that behavior. And broadly, that breaks down into, well, let's say 3 buckets. The 2 that we talked about, there's some sort of behavior that someone did that you know about. They went to this page on my site. They behaved in some way on my website, or I've got their email address. There's behavior that Google knows about. They're interested in American football or washing machines or whatever else it might be. And then there's contextual targeting, which is kind of pretty much dying out now. But okay, we do dog training. I'm going to stick an ad on the dog training websites because it's more likely to be relevant there than on the washing machine websites. But for the most part, Google sort of moved away from that. And it's more about the data that Google has on us, which we all know is massive. It's going through some changes at the moment with their little fight with Apple. But for the most part, Google knows an awful lot about you because Chrome, Android, YouTube, Google Analytics, Gmail, etc.
And with all these different types of kind of adverts, are there any that generally perform better than others? And I know it's going to be very much, search specific and company specific, but for instance, if you're using Facebook, there is a lot of emphasis on having an image, using a video, and those kind of things. There's a much more kind of visual kind of platform. I assume you can still do that within kind of Google, because you can use YouTube adverts, which are kind of videos.
Yeah.
So, do they perform better, or should we, if we're trying to get more bang for our buck, is there some, could we go for multimedia as opposed to just kind of text?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, okay, let's break it down into, I'm now going to go, so we've gone kind of 2 sides. We've gone search and display video.
Yeah.
Now let's break each of those into 2. On the search side, there's 2 main types of keyword. There's brand keywords and non-brand. So brand is people looking for you by name. So they're searching for James and they're searching for the name of your podcast. They know exactly what they're looking for. That's the easiest stuff to get right. It's basically cheating, but it's a great place to start when you're learning Google Ads, because it's really hard to mess up. It's super, super cheap clicks. Those people are looking for you. They want what you have. So they're going to convert. You're not going to waste any money on that. It's not going to cost a great training ground.
Yeah.
Now let's move over to the easy part on the display video side. So starting there with remarketing. So people that already know you, like you, trust you to some degree. They've been to your website at least once, and you're just targeting those people. I think the majority of spend on Facebook ads is some form of remarketing. It's some sort of warm audience.
Mm-hmm.
So starting over there, that could either be banners on the display network, or it could be videos on YouTube. So you said like bang for your buck. Well, I better finish it before I do that bit. Then non-brand keyword, which is the hardest bit to get right. So people searching for the products or services that you sell. And then you could have banners and YouTube ads that go after people that don't know you, cold traffic.
Yeah.
Remarketing, great. The challenge there is creating the assets. People get stuck creating a video to use as a YouTube ad. If you can get that created, and there's loads of services that can help with that, you kind of get what you pay for, but you can go to Fiverr and have those things built. That is going to be way, way, way cheaper than those clicks over on search. But they're also going to convert way, way, way less, because that person wasn't searching for your products and services. They just happened to bump into your ad while they were checking the football scores.
Yeah.
So cheap traffic, but doesn't convert very well. Ultimately, it kind of often works out about the same cost per lead. The benefit of that is there's huge potential scale. There's so much traffic on YouTube and these 2 million websites, and Google really, really wants to monetize that traffic. So you can buy it incredibly cheaply, maybe, 1 or 2 pennies a view for a YouTube ad. Whereas that recruitment keyword on Google might cost you $5 a click.
Yeah.
So it's really, if you can, do both and test Facebook, test them all and see what works best for you. There is no golden rule. Most businesses can't get their head around testing 3 or 4 different things at once. So in that case, do them sequentially. Do that one for 3 months, give it a red hot crack, get that working or not, and then move on to the next one and try that. But at a minimum, I think you should run a brand campaign and some form of remarketing campaign. It could be just a simple banner Ideally, maybe a video, because that builds rapport faster. But those two are a great place to start.
On the brand kind of keywords, you can bid on your competitors, right? Is that still the thing?
Correct. There is nothing in the system that says you can't do that. What you can't do is use that competitor name in your ad copy, because that would be deceptive and misleading conduct. And that's a big, big no-no.
Yeah.
And even just bidding on your competitor term, sometimes it has happened in the past. Sometimes you get a cease and desist letter from that company's lawyer saying, you can't bid on a name. Well, you can. There's nothing in the Google system that makes that illegal. Some people just get their nose out of joint. Some industries, certainly back in the day when this was a bit more nascent, some industries had a bit of a gentleman's agreement. You don't bid on my name, I won't bid on yours. But if you, for instance, go and search for the name of your business after listening to this, and you see 2 or 3 competitors showing ads at the top of the page, then you absolutely need to start that brand campaign. Google will recognize you as way more relevant than those competitors. And so those competitor ads will fall away to the bottom of the page, and your ad will be the only one at the top of the page. So it's a great way to protect that space, protect that traffic that you believe is rightfully yours, right? They're searching for you by name. Bugger the competitors, get out of the way, you. But yes, you can do the opposite. You can bid on your competitors' terms. And if they're not running ads, then you're very likely to show an ad at the top of the page and grab some of their traffic. If they're running brand ads, you probably won't get much traffic from those.
I would assume also that the brand ads are a little bit cheaper as well, because it's kind of easy traffic, right? Yeah.
Very cheap, because Google says, well, you're clearly the most relevant business for this. And so this is the genius of the Google system, is they found a way to, using automation and using machines, to build relevance in. So essentially that's wisdom of the crowds. You know, if you run an ad for your own business, maybe 1 in 3 people are going to be clicking on your ad, and Google says, oh, wow, these people are all finding exactly what they're looking for. I can tell that because they're all clicking on this thing. Well, I need to reward this advertiser in some way. I need to give you really cheap clicks and show your ads more and more. The flip side of that is, if you have an ad for that single word television or the single word recruitment, it's going to be really, really expensive. And not many people will click on that ad because it's not very relevant to them. You know, they were searching for all these different reasons, and you've got this ad that says, we do this. So not many people click. Google spot that and go, well, look, everybody's telling us by what they're clicking on that you're not very good. So now we need to penalize you as an advertiser. We need to charge you more and more and more over time. And they'll keep taking your cash. And some people blindly follow those suggestions up. I mean, I used to use this example, gosh, a decade ago, of a guy that was spending $25 a click in a market where he should not have been paying more than $1, but he just blindly followed those suggestions. Oh, I should pay more. Oh, okay. And that's the genius of the system. It's not about she with the biggest wallet wins. It's not about the big companies being able to beat the little companies. It's about the most relevant companies winning. And that's what makes it a great level playing field.
Let's move on a little bit to kind of understanding performance of your kind of adverts. So how do you know what does a good performing advert look like, you know, from a monetary value and a statistical and analytical kind of point of view? Is there kind of an average that we should be aiming for, you know, click-throughs or kind of conversions and those kind of things? That is there anything that you maybe work to, or is that just way overly simplistic?
Well, it's just very, very different for every business, because we are all special snowflakes and we all have different things that are important to us. So I ask people to start there. Have a look at your website, maybe with fresh eyes. What is it that you want people to do when they get to your website? I mean, I know you've got this big form on the contact page that you would love everybody to fill out, but they don't. But what else is there? Do you have PDFs that you want people to download? Do you have videos that you want them to watch? Is there a phone number up in the top right corner you want people to call? Because we can track all of those things. In a perfect world, we go play the points game next, and we assign different levels of points for each of those different actions. But even just having a list of all of those actions puts you ahead of 80% of competitors at this point, because now you know what you need to measure. And start by knowing, because you have no expectation of what you should pay at this point, but you need to have the expectation. This is a competitive environment, and there's a bunch of competitors here that have been doing this for years. Let's assume they kind of know what they're doing, and how much I need to pay, therefore, is going to be on par with them ultimately. So if you come into a market saying, I need to get leads for 20 quid, and everybody else in your market is happily paying 100, then it ain't going to work very well. And you don't know that when you start out. So it's, you buy a bit of data, as my options trading mentor used to say, you buy a bit of data from the market and you use that data to improve things.
Yeah.
So you don't know when you start, you learn that over time. Oh, this keyword tends to get me leads for 50 quid. This keyword tends to get me leads for 200. Why are we still running it? I don't know. Let's get rid of it. Cool, gone. And so you get to optimize then and choose which keywords you continue to bid on, which ad copy works for you. Well, that one sucks. Get rid of it. Write a new ad. And so you're always improving, always tweaking your ads. Yeah. There isn't a perfect number to chase, though.
I didn't think there would be, and I didn't think even if it was, you probably wouldn't tell me anyway.
Oh, I would. If it existed, I would.
So that's kind of the current landscape of kind of Google advertising and online advertising. What does the future hold, do you think, for kind of online advertising? And I know you talk a lot around about AI and automation, and it'd be interesting to know what's that going to play within kind of the future landscape of advertising.
So I think Google, one of the first companies out there to say we are an AI first company. If you remember sort of their keynotes 8-9 years ago, we're a mobile first company. And then that changed about 5 years ago. We're an AI first company. What does that mean? It means that AI and machine learning are really at the core of virtually every product within Google now, right? It's in Maps, it's in YouTube, it's the auto reply that you see at the bottom of Gmail. It's everywhere. And if you actually go to their site, when they're talking about things like bidding for ads, they have this wonderful line that it's almost impossible for a human to do. So Google basically believed that we can't keep up with the flood of data that comes into a Google ad account. So rather than give us all of their data, which of course they don't want to do, but even if they wanted to, they know that to make use of all of the data they have, we'd all have to go build our own little machine learning models just to make sense of that fire hose of information. So they've taken, not surprisingly, the position of, well, look, it's just all a bit too complicated for you, little human. We'll do it. We've got the best machine learning people on the planet, certainly outside of China. We'll just do it. We'll make sense of all of that for you. Leave it to us. And kind of where they want this to go is basically, what's your website? Give us your credit card. We'll do everything in between. Now, we're a fair way away from that. But that's kind of where they want it to get to. And if we break down those bidding, targeting, messaging, where we started, right? Bidding is just a giant mass game. Computers are very, very good at that. And the machine is already probably better, certainly than the average human, but right on par with a very good agency at this point. So machines 1-0, they should be doing that. Targeting, Google have more data than God at this point. Or I should say the God of your choice, Dave Allen. But there are, you can bring to the table there your own data, your own customer list, your own remarketing data, so that you have an edge over other competitors. So that's kind of almost, humans, machines, let's call that one even. I think where humans have the edge right now is on the messaging side. Persuasive copy, coming up with new ideas for offers, writing that copy on your website, not just the little ad, but making your website an amazing experience that people ideally want to share and come back to, and this useful, valuable stuff there. That's where humans really have the edge right now. I mean, I'm sure if you're into AI at all, you probably would have seen stuff about GPT-3 last year, which is AI is just prediction, right? Essentially, a purist would kill me for that, but it's essentially about prediction. It's about predicting the next little thing. And this GPT-3 thing was just predicting the next word. And it was able to write sentences, paragraphs, essays. It was able to write code and poetry. It was able to do maths, for God's sake. No one had ever taught it to do maths, but you just write that sentence, 231 plus 478, it would spit out the right answer most of the time. And the cherry-picked examples of this tool were mind-blowing, but it's just not there yet. It's you can't rely on it. Sometimes it's wonderful, and other times it's absolute garbage. And it doesn't understand what it's writing. It's just trying to stick the next word in sentence that makes sense. So that's where humans have a massive edge. But bigger picture, the genie's out of the bottle. There is no way we're going back to a manual world. Google love machine learning. They had to be convinced. Andrew Ng, the founder of Coursera, was the guy that kind of introduced a lot of AI and machine learning to Google about 10 years ago. They didn't really believe it at the time. Now they're massive converts. They know that it's the future of their business. As a marketer, you absolutely want to understand enough about machine learning to be able to understand what the basic concepts mean. You don't have to go build a neural network. I did. I went really deep into this 3-4 years ago. I learned how to code in Python and build neural networks. Most businesses are never, ever going to need to do that. What Lego blocks can you take off the shelf? What AI tools can you use within your business? Google Ads is heading to be one of those. The downside, as a marketer that's been doing this for 15 years, we're losing control to the machine.
Yeah.
Google are taking control away from us. And some in the industry will jump up and down and bitch and whinge, but really there's no point. Google aren't going to change that. They firmly believe that their machine can do a better job of these things we've been talking about than most humans. They also know that a tiny number of small businesses use Google Ads at this point in time, and they think there's a massive untapped market there that they really should be getting some dollars from, but it's a bit too complicated. It's a bit too hard. So maybe if we let the machines have a crack at doing all the hard bits, they can see, a few $100 billion upside there. So they're going to continue to make AI a big part of the machine.
I suppose they would when you own the platform and the advertising that kind of, I suppose you're just trying to keep people on there for as long as possible, isn't it? You're just trying to kind of make sure people just use your system basically. If you own you own the land and you own the house and you own everything else, it's kind of like,
and they're scoring their own homework, right?
Exactly,
It's the downside of AI obviously is there's large chunks of it are just black boxes, and we kind of just have to accept. I said before when we were talking about targeting, you get to see this list of what people have actually typed in to Google. Well, yeah, before September last year, that was the case. You got to see virtually every search term that you'd spent money on. These days, it varies by account, but these days you might only see 70% of that. Some accounts only see 20% of those search terms that people typed in. And how the hell do you optimize if you can only see 20% of the data? Well, you can't. So now you kind of have to hand things over to the machine. You have to trust in the machine. And as a good mate of mine says, trust but verify. Well, it's getting harder and harder to verify a lot of this stuff. We're being forced to use little bits of the system more and more. And over time, that's the direction it's going. So yes, there's going to be more automation, more AI, but arguably the machine is doing stuff that humans probably shouldn't be doing. We should never have been sitting there 2 days a week adjusting all these bids and sticking numbers into Excel to work out complicated formulas to work out, oh, we shouldn't be bidding 46 cents on that. We should be bidding 43 cents on that. How did I not know? Like, maybe humans should never have been doing that work. We should be doing the creative, the strategic, the problem solving, the soft skills stuff, talking to clients, helping them with their problems in their business. That's what humans are really, really good at. Let's let the machines do the big maths problem.
If people want to know a little bit more about kind of Google advertising, obviously they can pick up your book. So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit more about the book and where people can pick it up?
I'll go you one better. I'll give you 3 different ways. So you can go to the book, where all good books are sold. The Ultimate Guide to Google Ads. It is apparently the world's best-selling book on Google Ads. We're in our 6th edition now. But if you prefer learning by video or audio or short written chunks that you can follow along bit by bit, then my Google Ads Fundamentals course is gafcourse.com. And you can go there and your listeners can get a copy of that for free at gafcourse.com. So it's about 39 videos. It's about 3 hours all up. It ain't going to turn you into a master of Google Ads overnight, but it is going to get you started. And if you're still listening half an hour into this and going, I'm actually quite interested in this, I think this could be good for our business, then start there. If you're the business owner, then you've probably got 12 other hats that you're wearing, and you probably don't want to invest the time necessary to add one more thing to your plate, but find somebody in the business that's really interested in this. Have that skill in your business. Like I said before, get some help with somebody that's done this before to get you set up and pointing in the right direction. Much easier to manage an account ongoing if it's set up well. You don't want to try and set everything up from scratch yourself. That's probably you're going to take a beating if you do that. And then, yeah, I have two businesses, agencysavvy.com. We teach a few hundred agencies how to do what we do, agencies and businesses, how to do what we do. So how to run Google Ads, Google Shopping, YouTube, analytics, all of that fun stuff. But the main part of the business is the done for you agency. So that's websavvy.com.au. We typically work with people spending sort of between around 10 to 100 grand a month is our typical client, some smaller, some bigger. And if you're already running Google Ads and you think it can work a bit better, then come find us and we'll tell you if we can help.
Perfect. We will include all of those links in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you or wants to take one of your courses or pick up a copy of the book, then they can all find it there. So, but Mike, for now, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
My pleasure.